I need to go AFK this week, so I threw together a quick follow-up on the June 18th Monsters and Memories stream, which was posted to YouTube on June 19th. In this stream, Shawn addressed in-game pets, and I realized something. A lot of people heard the word pets and immediately assumed we were talking about turning Monsters and Memories into a game where every class runs around with a battle buddy. That isn't my position. I completely agree that not every class should have a gameplay-focused pet. Pet classes should remain special because their pets are a core part of their identity. If everyone gets a combat companion, the classes built entirely around that dynamic lose what makes them unique. What I'm actually advocating for is a clear, hard line between a full-on pet class and what I'll call a lore companion. The former exists because the class is built around it. The latter exists because it helps sell the fantasy. Keeping those two ideas separate protects class identity while still letting players engage with the world in a more personal way. A pet class is defined by its pet. The pet contributes meaningful gameplay, combat power, utility, or tanking. It's a major part of the class functionality. A lore companion, familiar, or animal companion is different. These creatures primarily exist to reinforce class identity and fantasy rather than serve as a primary gameplay mechanic. For example, a druid having a bonded animal companion feels completely at home within the broader fantasy tradition. A shaman having a spirit animal, a wolf, raven, a totemic companion fits the archetype. A wizard with a familiar is one of the oldest traditions in fantasy. None of those examples need to be full-blown combat pets, competing with dedicated pet classes. They don't need a massive health bar, they just need to be present to fulfill the visual and thematic promise of the class. By separating the two, you can preserve the unique, powerful identity of true pet classes while still letting other archetypes live out their classic fantasy. What I found really encouraging about Shawn's comments is that the team actually seems quite open to a middle ground here. He openly discussed everything from cosmetic familiars and house pets to active creature taming, player-driven pet economies, and the introduction of real risk by allowing pets to die when players bring them into dangerous areas. His concern wasn't really the pets themselves. His concern was what would happen when companions start following players into places where space is limited and gameplay matters most. Shawn specifically mentioned that running around Night Harbor with a pet dog or familiar isn't a big deal. There's plenty of room in a city. The concern seemed to be more about adventuring spaces, like dungeons, camps, and dangerous wilderness areas where a large number of companions could create visual clutter and interfere with immersion or simply make an already tight space feel crowded. And I think that's a completely reasonable concern. Where I think we may actually agree is that companions are most interesting when they are deeply grounded in the world. If a druid bonds with an animal, a wizard raises a familiar, or a shaman calls forth a spirit creature, those relationships feel meaningful because they are directly tied to the character's identity rather than functioning just as another collectible immersion-breaking cosmetic. So for me, the question has never been, should every class get a pet? Because the answer to that is an absolute definitive no. For me, the question is, should certain classes whose fantasy has traditionally included companions be allowed to express that fantasy in some way? That is a very different discussion, because I'm not asking for every class to get a pet. I'm asking whether certain classes feel a little incomplete without one. Until next time, keep exploring. I'll see you in the next world.
Pet rock is definitely a very cheap asset for us to put in animation costs. are worth the price.
Okay, so let me make sure I understand the current situation. I asked for a bear, Shawn offered me a rock, and somehow I'm considering it.